Hello, my Richies, and welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Strategy Sessions here on the Make Life Rich Movement podcast. My name is Sarah, I'm your host, and in today's episode, we're talking all about the past. What do you do with the past? Sometimes we let the past weigh us down, other times we let the past motivate us to make change. And for me, the past, until very recently, has been meaning, value, purpose, representation of who I am. And I want you to consider while listening to this episode or watching this episode today, how you interact with and relate to your past. Our past can be something very limiting if we allow it to be the standard in which we move forward for our future. And I say that as someone that has literally been doing that to herself for the last 27 years. I know I talk a lot about grief on this show, but grief has been where I have received the largest bouts of growth in my life. And for me, recently discussing in full detail my father's entire cancer journey and my grief journey that was attached to it has allowed me in a way to close that chapter, publish that book, and put it on a shelf. And I didn't really think that that would be the outcome of me guesting on this podcast and sharing that story, but it was, and it's sick as fuck. I am so thankful for what feels like a brand new approach to life. And in a way, I started really picking apart maybe the codependency that my narrative and my story had on the past. It was a lot more able to be determined because it had already happened. So it was a lot less scary. There was a lot less risk. It's a lot easier to control your life if you're living it with the scope and view of the past. But even things outside of personal bouts of just suffering and evolution and growing out of things and spaces and people, we also find ourselves in the space in business, which I most certainly have in the last 3 years. The last 3 years for me were spent building a digital product, building workbooks, and building out this podcast. And as the podcast grew, I saw my interest really waning in the business side of things for me, which was namely teaching entrepreneurs strategy and how to bring their dream to life with strategy that would also allow them to find success. And through this course that I built, it was a 5.5 hour plus course. I was selling it for $2,500. I have a workbook that I sell for $49. I just found myself, in essence, not wanting to talk about business all the time, but I did really understand that people needed help, and my 15 years of experience had to go somewhere, so I poured them into these resources. And all of the time that was spent in creating these products, these digital products, in essence now, what, are they wasted? They could be, I don't know. I don't want to look at it as having been wasted. I just look at it as I had to fully wrap up neatly in a bow that portion of my career that I just felt myself growing apart from and growing away from. With the course, with the workbook, there's certainly evergreen things that could sell forever. And in fact, in just having this episode here, we are going to offer the course for a stupid, crazy sale. We'll do like $199 or something. Lifetime access. We'll do the workbook for $20. So we'll attach the links in the show notes for that here with the discounted prices. But outside of those products, yes, their information is timeless, but my attachment to them and my attachment to wanting to make that my brand and my livelihood and what I talk about every single day had just evolved. I felt myself being more drawn towards telling people's personal stories and the ways in which they grew from those triumphs, those tribulations, the grief, the suffering, to hopefully find a way to build success and do so in a manner that helps others, which is another really big component of the guests that I bring on the show. I want to know how people are using their purpose and their passion to better the world, better their communities, better their hometowns. And it's just been a pure joy to be able to do that. And in leaning into that being my full-time work since the beginning of the year when I made this decision that, like I don't need to hold on to these things just because I made them. I don't need to hold on to these things because they, have a chance of becoming more and more successful and making me more and more money from them. I wanted to be fully devoting all of my time, energy, attention, input, output, visualizations to bettering the world. And I do that through the medium of storytelling and through this podcast. So on Sundays, we're certainly still going to discuss some business aspects that are going to help you to further your mission, your purpose, your passion. But primarily, we're going to be keeping it a lot closer to the heart. And we're going to be discussing all the things: grief, growth, success, happiness, joy, awe, wonderment, disappointment, failure, everything in between. I thank you so much for joining me, my Richies. This is a short one. I want you to think and consider what your relationship is to the past and what you can do to bring yourself a little bit more into the present and get a little bit more prepared for the future. Thank you so much for listening or watching if you are doing so on Spotify or YouTube. I ask that you please just share this with anyone you know that would love to hear the message. Please subscribe already if you haven't, either to YouTube or to Spotify. Please like as well on YouTube or Spotify. And as always,